This is the How to Succeed podcast brought to you by Sandler. Sandler is the worldwide leader in sales management and customer service training. For more information, go to Sandler.com. I'm your host, Mike Montague, Director of Community Engagement at Sandler. And my guest this week is Larry Van Sant. And he is Sandler in Frederick, Maryland. And he's going to be talking to us about self-inflicted leadership problems. How can you avoid stepping on your own foot? That's what it's all about this week. Again, for more information on Sandler, we have free resources, more podcasts like this. Click subscribe or go to Sandler.com and click on the resources and insights tab for more information. All right, here we go. It's how to succeed at avoiding self-inflicted leadership problems. All right, Larry, tell us a little bit about the self-inflicted part. I think that's the interesting part of our title here today. How can leaders avoid causing themselves problems?
Well, I think so many times that, leaders have an attitude. It's let me fix this and I'm going to move on to the next to-do list, check it off. And what happens then is that we miss great opportunities to develop our team. Some of the things that we see is that we create our own issues by maybe hiring the wrong person, for example. We don't use assessments, we're not following, but we want to get that to-do list checked off. I filled the position. Now, we fill the position. The person may not be qualified, or they may be qualified. We don't onboard them. We don't have an accountability. We don't coach them. So these are some of the self-inflicted aspects that we see.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to unpack here. The ideal attitude here for leaders is that we have to make ourselves irrelevant. We have to make our team self-sustainable. Otherwise, we're creating the cycle where we're solving problems for people and we just get on this gerbil wheel and we keep going, right? Do you see any other misconceptions or add on to that?
No, I think leaders basically, you see so many leaders that are doing this for their self-recognition, not for developing their team. They'll push their team, but they're not leading the team. They're looking for personal gratification at the expense of the team. And we see that quite a bit. Leaders, basically, I love the phrase, eaters eat last. And I think that's really and truly a great model to follow. If you look, we have to figure out what motivates our team and how do we take that motivation, figure out what their goals are and help them achieve that. Because without their work, without their success, we're not going to be successful. But so many leaders do not look at it that way.
Yeah, I agree. And especially if you're in a small business and it's your name on it and it's really a hard thing. But I think even with enterprise organizations and you have a sales team, like if you want a better sales team, you need to become a better manager. You got to go first. You got to be willing to do some things that you're asking your team to do. You have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone and do some unusual things if you want different results, right? There's also that sort of comfort zone thing that everybody falls into regardless of what position you have.
Yeah. And when we look at that, the attitude it's not about me. It's about our team creating great results. That's basically what we're looking for. And how do we do that? Well, each team member may need something differently. But what we see when we are practicing, for example, coaching, we see leaders telling people what to do. Mm-hmm. Well, number one, they're probably not the same personality style as a leader in all likelihood. So telling them is not going to sound the same to them as they would do it themselves. The other thing is that when we're coaching, we're trying to figure out what do they need to do better, more of, or different. And that's where a leader has to be engaged with his team. So many times the leaders just jump to a conclusion, and we talk about this blind spot called accountability. And what happens is that leaders will create accountability, but then they don't do it on a consistent basis. In other words, the bomb has to drop, and then they start coaching. Coaching becomes an event rather than a process.
Well, I love that one. I'm glad you brought up accountability too, because that's one of the things that I see with leaders. And again, sort of maybe especially when it's the owner or somebody that's pretty high up or somebody with tenure, is they think everybody else should be accountable, but they can take off on Friday and go play golf, or they don't have to play by the rules and they do their own thing. And it's really setting a bad example for your team, which becomes a self-inflicted problem. If you're trying to take as much out of your business as possible, so will everybody else. They're going to follow the leader, right?
Right.
And it creates a
Absolutely.
lot of problems, especially around accountability, when you're not doing what you promised your team you would do, or you're not willing to do what you're asking them to do. It can create a lot of problems there.
We ask the question all the time in our leadership classes about, is your accountability, is it consistent? And does it apply to everyone? Do the core values of the company apply to everyone? The other thing we see, Mike, is that people will hire people, and leaders bring people on, and then they have no onboarding or training. And just because they've been trained by someone else doesn't mean that that's going to fit in your organization. We actually had a company that hired a salesperson that was over $3 million in sales. And they called us. They didn't do any assessments. The leader had an attitude that, okay, look, they should just know how to do it, which was
Mm-hmm.
the wrong attitude. Ended up that the person was selling zero, had not sold anything since they hired him for 3 months. He wasn't a fit. I mean, his job before was totally different than what his job entailed, and he was motivated differently. And
Mm-hmm.
it ended up being a huge mistake for them.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect transition to our behavior bucket here, because the right thing at the right time and setting your team up for success is a great way to avoid a lot of problems, right? I
Absolutely.
think as employees, we sometimes feel that leaders come to us and tell us what we should have done different on that sales call we just blew and lost. And it's like something that would have been great to bring to my attention yesterday
Right.
before
Absolutely.
I had this problem. Now there's nothing I can do about it. So really being proactive in your coaching, training, onboarding, setting expectations for the company values, all the great stuff you mentioned is a big part of it. Any other thoughts on the goals, plans, and actions here? How we do the right thing at the right time?
Well, I think that we have to. I believe that most of our leaders are not spending enough time coaching their team, developing their team. And we see that in a couple of ways. One, in performance, and two, in turnover. Turnover results from that. So if we look at our attitude and figure out what the goals are for the company, and break those down to each individual and how we get them to motivate. That's our job as a leader, is to understand what motivates our team. What are they working for? Why do they come to work every day? And we ask we have asked over 35 leaders what motivates their team, and they tell us it's money. So that's what they plan around. They plan around the money. But when they went and asked them, out of the 25 leaders, 90%, 95% said that it had nothing to do with money. Okay,
Yeah.
that money certainly is important. We understand that, but it was what they were able to do in the future. Did they have a career ladder? So when we look at this as a leader, our goals are to achieve the very best for our team, and our plan should be to provide the training that they need, provide the coaching that they need, have someone to mentor, create a career ladder for them. That's the plan. And then as we go through, and if we're not assessing, if we can't manage it and measure it, then we can't measure it. If we can't measure it, we can't basically manage it. So when we
Yeah.
look at this, how do we continue to strive for a continued process of improvement? Because greatness is basically, it could be evasive if we are not searching for better ways of doing things and helping our team develop better ways. And I think that that's one of the things when we are looking at coaching and we get involved with our team, and that they know we care, that they know we want to build a ladder, and this is where you are. And we talk about these gaps This is where you are. This is where I want you to be. And when you get here, this is how we're going to do it together. And when we get here, then we're going to move on to step 2. So the plans have to be reviewed. They have to be revised. Sometimes we have the wrong people in the wrong seat.
Yeah.
I had the personal privilege of meeting Jim Collins and talking about good to great. And one of the biggest things he said, the great is evasive because we have maybe the right people, but they're in the wrong seats. And so how do we develop them? How do we develop the team to achieve the level of success? And that's where, our actions come in, the behaviors come in. We have to do the behaviors in order to improve. And that may be practicing. It may be going out with them and continuing to coach them and then practice and practice and practice. Mike, you've said that over and over on podcasts. You have to, in order to improve and step out of your comfort zone, you have to practice.
I love all of that. I'll just highlight 2 things. One is what you said about the good people. I think that if you, especially a salesperson, if you have somebody on your team that can sell and they're doing a great job, keeping that person motivated and happy and on your team and preventing turnover for a stupid reason, let's just say, like a personality conflict or a policy change or a commission structure change or something that demotivates the person. Those are all things that are fixable by you as the leader, or preventable. I think that is probably one of the number one self-inflicted, things that I've had. Like you said earlier, if you got a salesperson that's doing $3 million and you let them go, you now have the challenge of trying to replace that $3 million and that person. And when you're hiring, I think the second thing I would say is, I love what you said about the assessments, and you can let good people go in the hiring process so long as you hire a good person. But hiring a bad person that doesn't sell, that's what really costs you. So getting really picky on weeding out who you bring to your team for me is a big deal, because when you have a good team, they ask to be coached. They do things outside. They want to be held accountable. They're helping you grow as a leader. If you have a bad team, there's only so much that you can do. You have all of these self-inflicted struggle. You get a lot of excuses. You get a lot more headaches. You get a lot more problems to solve. And when you hire, I'm just saying a bad person, they're obviously not bad people, but a poor performer, you're saying to the other people on the team, it's okay to have this person on the team that's not performing, that's dragging us down, that's creating drama and excuses. So I love that you highlighted people, and I wanted to give you one more shot at that. Is there anything else you'd add under the behavior bucket or respond?
Well, I think under the behavior bucket, our behavior needs to be consistent, and we need to be consistent in as far as accountability and clarity of our expectations. And I think sometimes as leaders, we avoid that because we don't want to have the tough conversations. And one of the things that we saw a person leave that was a top salesperson, but because all of a sudden we decided, or the leader decided, you need to start putting in all the information into your CRM system. Well, the guy had been there for about 3 to 4 years and no one had made him do that. Everybody else was doing it, but he wasn't. Now when they came in and this happened, gone. Just because we didn't do it in the beginning, it wasn't set out as far as an expectation. He looked at it as being punished. So.
Yeah, I can see that a lot for sure. So let's talk about techniques here and how we avoid self-inflicted problems as a leader. And a few things come to mind for me. We've mentioned assessments as objective third-party feedback, but I think also having a coach yourself or having somebody outside of you look at what you're doing. It's always easier to see somebody else and go, oh, I see what their problem is. They're doing this that's causing their team to do that. But when you're reading the label from inside the bottle, you got a completely different story. You're not looking
Absolutely.
at it objectively. So coach would be number one for me. What's on your list?
I think I would agree with you. I think coaching and being coached. I think that we need an accountability partner, whether it's a group like Vistage or something of that nature. But I believe that all leaders need to expose their self, and we don't want to typically do that because we feel like we have all the right answers. which is not true. I mean, I had a company before Sandler that we had 165 people. I can assure you they had more answers than I did.
Hmm.
So there, and I believe that having an assessment on yourself, knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses, and not being afraid to bring people on board that are smarter than you or better than you, and some of the things we do. But when we look at also technique, I think we have to take and have a hiring funnel, basically. Go down, understand what you're looking for rather than just picking somebody out that you like. We had a owner of a company the other day. He had hired 5 people over the year. All 5 had left, and we did some assessments, and they said, "Well, I really like these people, and your assessment's saying they're not working." I said, "Well, how's that worked out for you before?" So when we look at their behavior, but the technique, understand what leaders are looking at from a technique standpoint. How do we communicate? What's our culture within the organization? Um, you know, are they going to fit within? Can I deal with them? From that standpoint, what techniques do I need to do in order to communicate with them? You're communicating with a 65-year-old person versus a 22-year-old person. The communication, the technique's going to be different, and you need to be
I
able to step out of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things we haven't talked about, I think, is communicating that long-term vision and the goals for the organization. I think sometimes leaders fall into this trap of just saying, like, we want to grow revenue. We want to sell as much as possible this year, and that's our only goal. And it doesn't really help the team with how to do that, how to not leverage the future of the company to get short-term gains, or how to not take advantage of our clients so that we get repeat business and all kinds of other things that might come into play. And I think you mentioned values earlier, but communicating that story of the company and why we're here, the why behind some of these choices from leadership, really makes a big difference, because that's what gets the buy-in, and you get people stopping the fight over the different tactics and techniques.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing is that some of them, are looking at a goal, and it's a huge number, and we have to remember we're managing people, not numbers
Yeah.
alone. So one of the thing is, how do they achieve this goal? Break it down. Break the goal down. If it's a sales goal, break it down to how many activities we have to do, and then we're looking at this. We talked the other day with a client and said, "All right, you're getting a lot of great meetings. However, how many of those meetings turn into presentations?" And he said, "Well, not many." And I said, "Could we be doing unpaid consulting?" And he looked at me. He says, "Well, I do that all the time." He said, and so when we were looking, I said, "Well, is that going to help you achieve your goals?" He said, "I guess not." So when we were looking at this, the leader had not picked up. But when what are the issues that we need to focus on in order to improve and help our team improve and achieve the goals? Do they have an ideal customer profile? Do they know who to go after? Uh, do they have a closing ratio that they know how many meetings they have to have in order to close a revenue? Do they know their average ticket? This is information that we as leaders should be providing them with, so that we can work simultaneously together. Because a person may be great at prospecting, but he may be terrible at closing. He just can't ask the tough, or she can't ask the tough question. And so we need to focus on what they need to do in order to improve. And I think that this is something that we just don't do until somebody is 3 months behind in their budget. And then we go, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, what are we going to do here? We got to get rid of this person." And all we had to do was spend some time with this person.
Great stuff. And I think that's a great place to wrap up that part of the discussion, because I want to get to know you a little bit, Larry. Larry, you've been a longtime Sandler trainer in Frederick, Maryland here. And I'm wondering, at this point in your career, how do you define success?
Wow. I think the success, the way I define it today, we talk about our success triangle as attitude, behavior, technique. And I believe that success is waking up every day with a positive attitude, The behavior that I do is strive to do something better each day and to influence my clients, but to learn something every day and to continue to step out of my comfort zone. And then the technique is constantly practicing and doing better and helping more people achieve their goals. When I get a email saying that you've worked with 7 of our team, and that's a great email. You've helped us achieve our goals. But here's the email that really made me feel so great inside, is when a young man actually sent me an email and said, "No one has had an impact on my life like you have." And I think
Yeah.
that's what we do at Sandler. We impact people's lives. And I don't know one Sandler trainer that doesn't look at it that way. So that's how I look at my success. Are we are we creating results for others? And if we create results for others, our results and our success will continue.
Love that. Now, since we're talking about self-inflicted leadership problems, what was the biggest self-inflicted hurdle that you had to get over in your career in order to be successful?
Unpaid consulting was probably the biggest thing that I had to get over in my career. I was used to features and benefits, and the other that was from a sales standpoint, and from a leadership standpoint, it was basically onboarding, not onboarding our team, and not really getting to know them, managing numbers instead of people.
And do you have a favorite Sandler rule?
I do, and it applies to sales, but I think it applies to us as leaders as well. Sales is a conversation between adults to uncover the truth. And I believe that as leaders, we have to have a conversation as adults to find out what motivates our people and uncover the truth there. So this is a great rule that I think that we don't focus on enough.
Our new number one, recently promoted as the new number one rule in the book, How to Sell to the Modern Buyer. Go check that out anywhere you buy books, or go to Sandler.com for more information. Larry, I'll give you one last shot at it. Anything I should have asked you, or anything that we missed you wanted to share today?
No, Mike, I just it's a pleasure being here, and I hope that we brought some value to the various clients and prospects that are out there viewing this.
I appreciate it. You definitely did. Once again, the How to Succeed podcast is brought to you by Sandler, the worldwide leader in sales management and customer service training. More information at Sandler.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Send it to a leader that you think needs to hear it. I think that's always a great way to do that. And leave us a review, too. If you're looking, the correct one is the 5th star. That's the one you want to click on in iTunes there. We would appreciate it. And until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. That's what I always say. See ya.
So long.